Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Divided Films, the podcast where audiences and critics do not agree on movies, and we pick a side. This week on the podcast, as always, we have my co-host Keith.
Hello!
And joining us back on the podcast, our frequent guest, our good buddy Sebastian. Welcome back, Sebastian.
Hello, happy to be back.
Glad to have you back and talk about a movie that I think we should have a very interesting discussion on. This week we're discussing the 2014 movie Noah, directed by Darren Aronofsky and starring Russell Crowe. This movie falls into the category of having a positive score from critics and a negative score from audiences. On Rotten Tomatoes, 76% of critics approve, but only 41% of audiences approve. And the critics' consensus, with sweeping visuals grounded by strong performances, in service of a timeless tale told on a human scale, Darren Aronofsky's Noah brings the Bible epic into the 21st century. So our first time talking about a religious-themed movie.
Just in time for Easter.
Yes, exactly. That came to mind. We at one point were considering discussing the Passion of the Christ, but we'll save that for another day. That one's a lot to take in. So I think we'll start off easy as for our first religious film discussion, and we'll go with Noah instead. So there you have it, though. Noah, movie that critics were more on board with than audiences. Sebastian, we saw this movie together actually in a test screening back in 2014, or maybe it was 2013. I don't know how ahead of time we had seen it before it was released in theaters, because we went to this mall where there's like a really big AMC, and I actually in a couple of test screenings there that they'll like go around and ask people to come see them. So that's where we saw that, and not all the special effects were finished being rendered, which was an interesting experience. There was a couple of moments where you saw very choppy, unfinished computer CGI animation, and it would take us out of it a little bit. I don't know. There's a couple of big moments where all of a sudden you get like really blocky animation or something, rendered to be finished.
Yeah, like the big battle, it was just like a bunch of gray blobs.
Really? Looks like Minecraft.
Yeah, exactly. It's like all of a sudden you go from like we saw some finished ones mixed with some unfinished ones. It's like whoa. They gave us a heads up that would be the case, but it was jarring nevertheless. But anyways, this might be the first time I'd seen the finished film, because I didn't really go back to it until now.
Same.
But what do you guys think? Is it surprising that this is something critics like more than audiences? And what were your initial thoughts? So what do you think, Sebastian?
So I think, I was pleasantly surprised, having seen it, for the second time. I wasn't sure how well it would hold up. And ultimately, I think it is an accomplished movie. And I'm not really surprised that critics liked it, because I think it kind of beats expectations in some way from a critical standpoint of, this religious epic, but I think it takes a very creative approach to the story, and I enjoy that aspect of it. Obviously, it has a lot of messaging, a lot of certain these can get a little preachy at times, so I think that might be an aspect that audiences maybe didn't like. This kind of stark portrayal of humanity. It's warmongering, flesh-eating monsters.
Right.
So it can feel judgmental, I guess, if you take it personally. But ultimately, I think it was a good movie. But at the same time, I don't know if I care about seeing it again. Weirdly enough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, this was the first time that I'd seen it. Apparently you had seen it since it first had been released back in 2014. So that maybe speaks to how it's not as rewatchable of a movie. But then again, I don't know how many of Aronofsky's movies are super rewatchable anyway. Not that you have to make super rewatchable movies, but that is just an interesting trend in his filmography. What do you think, Keith?
Uh, um, well, first off, I think Darren Aronofsky is perfect for this podcast. This isn't his only divided film. Whether the critics love it or hate his movies, he's kind of made for this podcast, JJ. And
Hmm.
I always think if a movie's like 3 hours, you kind of or longer, you kind of have to like you kind of have to dedicate some time in your schedule. You can't just put a 3 hour movie on willy nilly. Darren Aronofsky, even though this movie's like 2 and 20 minutes, 2:15, you
It's
kind of
not too
have to.
long.
It's not too long, but you have to say, "I'm going to watch Noah." You can't just
Hmm.
put Noah on like that. Watching this is my first time. I don't get invited to press screenings. I I wish, and I wish somewhere along the line we got like a comedy of Noah, but instead we got a goofy historical epic drama that completely is a mixed direction.
Oh, okay. So you
Yeah,
think maybe the movie is at times like unintentionally like humorous, and that might deflate some of the epicness that it's striving for.
I think the story of Noah is in any other context is goofy. And like I know this movie has offended people for some reason, but it's hard. Come on, when VeggieTales makes Noah, it's goofy. This
Yeah,
movie,
VeggieTales has done like Jonah and the
I
Whale. They've
I
done a
don't
bunch of
want
them.
to. I think I'm happy this movie exists. It gives us like I think Darren Aronofsky is one of the most interesting filmmakers, and his passion for this movie shows in all his movies. Um, but it just kind of it missed the mark. I think maybe for me it sounds like it's just for me, but I didn't like
I
it.
don't know. He's a
I was not a
definitely
fan. I respect it,
okay.
but I didn't like
Sure.
it.
Well, Darren Aronofsky is always a director who makes very bold choices in his movies, and this is definitely something I feel like there's an. It's hard to do like ism against his last name because it's already hard to pronounce, but like an Aronofsky ism of this movie, for example, is like those rock angels, right? That's the first. Okay, that's definitely a touch brought by the director. Not that I am like an expert on the Bible or anything, but I'm pretty sure there aren't rock angels in the Bible.
I
Maybe
have interesting
fallen
biblical
angels.
context for that. I'll do
Okay,
that later when you're done.
this is one of the reasons too, Sebastian. Like, I mean, for starters, I'm pretty sure we all grew up in Catholic families, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yes.
I'm probably like the least. I remember the least from my Sunday school days. So you guys will have to like help me out a bit when it comes to what exactly is in the Bible when in the actual story of Noah. But anyways, that is an interesting creative interpretation that was taken, and I think from my research, some people didn't mind. I mean, America is a very Christian religious country, and people take their faith very seriously. So there are people who don't want a creative interpretation of biblical stories, but then on the other hand, there are other people who do like just the fact that there are mainstream movies about biblical stories. So you kind of have a mixed bag. I think within religious communities, this might be a divisive film.
Sure. And I kind of want to dispute what Keith said about Noah being a goofy story. Like, I'm not sure what you mean there exactly, but one of the things I really respect and like about this movie is that it doesn't take the story lightly, right? A lot of these biblical stories that have like these really heavy things that happen, but it's all very condensed. Like, I actually read last night. I read this story of Noah,
Okay.
just to give myself like just like a bearing on like what it was in the Bible, and it's like a couple pages, and it doesn't go into really
It's four
details to flesh it
chapters.
out. Yeah, but what I like about the movie is that like, oh yeah, this guy had to live with being involved with the drowning of the entire human race,
Yeah.
and the scenes where they have to listen to the cries of the people dying, and it's like the psychological torment of that. I think is a really interesting aspect of it, and I think it has a lot of merit, I believe.
That was explored in the scene, obviously, after the flooding has happened, which I want to get into that scene too. But I found that to be almost an element that I found horrifying. The one image of the people up on the one rock, it's like you can tell if it's like the land is totally flooded. Maybe just some parts of high land is sticking out of the water a little bit, but these people clinging to the rock as the waves crash upon them. That did look like something painted from a biblical scene,
Yeah.
or maybe something you might seen in like a very scary stained glass or something like that. So, or even some moments I did find kind of horrifying when they're charging the ark and that one girl gets like trampled to death. I was like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's very brutal at times,
Yeah.
which I guess is going for that Old Testament style of religious storytelling, which is the brutality of this world before Jesus saves everyone. It was a very brutal and violent world.
Well, it's
'Cause
Old
of-
Testament, so Jesus wasn't really involved.
That's
here.
what I'm saying. Like pre like like in like the
Was it,
old
though?
Testament.
I know we could, like, there are, and Emma Watson even says a quote, like, it's a very kind of ambiguous timeline. It's like, because what these people are wearing and some of these metalworks, like when the first time you find
Well, it's anachronistic, right? Because you don't
it's
know what
well, it's
happened
supposed to
before
be
the
like
time
1,000
of
years
the
in the
flood.
past or 1,000 years in the future. Like,
Well,
it's like they're wearing
how
ponchos
far-
with buttons and the metal works of.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? To give you context, right? Like this is like, I think there's like maybe some brief stuff in the Bible about it. Like, I'm not really religious, but just to give it kind of some context, I think it's interesting. Like that there, like, think of it as like there's a whole world before the flood, and this is developed for several generations since like Adam and Eve. So we don't like.
Yeah.
I think it creates a lot of like creative license to create a world that has a certain amount of technology or a certain amount of element of that
Development.
But, there was the idea that these people were developed in some ways, and the Watchers in the story are the ones that taught the humans how to do a lot of this stuff, a lot of metal work, and in the Bible, even like I think they talk about like sorcery and shit like that. But interesting tidbit about the Watchers, though, they're not like necessarily the good guys.
They're fallen angels.
Yeah, the fallen angels, but like the funny thing is they kind of come out of like an apocryphal book of the Bible, which is kind of like a book of the Bible that didn't make the cut for the actual Bible.
Okay.
So like they come out of the book of Enoch, and basically there were angels that came to Earth, like they were like, so, and they decided to teach humans. And this is like what I found on Wikipedia here, so it should be fun to listen to. And it kind of like adds a different element to the story of Noah. But it
So this is
doesn't
from
add-
this is from the director's cut of the Bible.
Yeah, director's cut of the Bible. This has not
Snyder
much
cut.
to do. Has
Yeah.
not much to do with the movie Noah, but it kind of tells you what they changed to kind of make it for the movie, to make the movie easier to make in some ways, right? So in the book of Enoch, the Watchers are angels dispatched to Earth to watch over the humans. They soon began to lust for human women, and at the prodding of their leader, defect, to illicitly instruct humanity and procreate with them. The offspring of these unions are the Nephilim, savage giants who pillage the earth and endanger humanity. So basically, like, part of the story of Enoch is that, like, basically these angels and humans started fucking, and they created these mean giants, and that's part of the reason why God wanted to flood the earth. But that is, obviously, like, glazed over for the movie to make it more, like, tangible, like a story.
I'm okay with the
Wow.
padding of the. I understand the padding. Like,
I just think it was
that this
interesting. Like, I'm not-
movie-
Yeah, that
No, it
is.
is.
That-
The lore
that's
of
why
this
we
movie
have-
is interesting.
That's why we have such good-looking peoples, because angels came down and had children with some ugly people, and we
Well,
got
all
some.
of them drowned now.
Oh, that's true. Well,
They're
well,
I just thought when
I
the
also
Lord of the
gotta-
Rings
I also-
stuff happened, it was incredibly goofy. I had to say to myself, like, what the fuck is going on?
What was
what
goofy?
movie
I'm
am I
sorry.
in? The Lord of the Rings. When Lord of the Rings started happening in the middle of the movie,
Well, like when the big-
the people started running, the blocks of text or the block of graphics that you guys saw in your pre-screening. When they're all running
Oh,
to the boat, to the ark,
oh yeah, and they're
and
almost getting
the
smashed by the rocks.
the watchers are blocking it. I had to say to myself, like, what the hell am I watching? Like, where did this movie go? I thought what it was trying to do was coming off. I was like, what the hell am I watching? And
I
I
bought
guess
it.
goofy
I
is the term that I'm using, but
I
it's
kind of bought it because I don't know, for some reason I found these rock angels. I had some weird affection for them. I thought they were kind of like adorable. I
They're
don't know.
compelling. They're very
They're
compelling.
right. They're expressive, which is interesting. And so when they're going back up
But
to
they
heaven and they're being redeemed, I found that kind of cathartic. I thought, I don't know, for some reason I was more invested in these rock angels than in the other characters. So I find that to be like kind of a beautiful thought that they, or when they are destroyed, they go back up to heaven for their redemption.
Yeah, but and to Keith's point, I do see the Lord of the Rings in the rocks because they do remind me of the tree people, Lord of
Of
the
the Ents, yeah.
of the Ents, yeah.
Yeah.
So there is that element of it, and you're not wrong in that aspect, Keith. But it didn't bother me
no.
that much.
Well, I guess it did bother me when I did like wake myself up going like, wait, what the hell am I watching? But
Mm.
I can understand. I wonder if he wanted this in this movie because the studio, and this is what I do appreciate. The studio gave 130, 125 or 160. They gave it to Darren to say, "Hey, make your biblical epic." I always appreciate a studio putting trust in it, trust in a
Well,
guy's
this
vision like
film
that.
this film came out after. This is his follow up to Black Swan. Is that correct, or was there something in
I
between?
I think it's
Because
the
so.
next one.
I think
Yeah,
Black Swan was a
that's
really
2012,
huge.
11.
That I think even 2010. But I remember Black Swan was a huge hit,
Yes.
and as opposed to his previous works, which definitely had more like modest success and had more of an indie feel, Black Swan definitely felt like a big payoff movie for him, and maybe it launched him into mainstream, uh, like the sort of mainstream, like filmography that people like. He almost became like a household name briefly. So, yeah, the studio paid off big time from Black Swan and said, okay, like that's the thing. That's like the blank check thing, right? Where you now can, you made us a lot of money before, so now go ahead and do your thing because now we're just going to trust the process. And I don't believe this movie made a lot of money. Is that correct? I think this
Fair.
movie
It did fair.
was. I think when you include looking at the budget and the box office, I think when you include marketing, it might have like broken even. So it wasn't like as huge of a success. And again, it's not a movie that really people went back to or even really remembered that much. Um, but I don't know. I kind of appreciate the fact that I went back to it because there are some things I did really like about it. I think for me, the moment that sold it for me was when Noah is telling the story, the Genesis, and you're getting the juxtaposition between the religious version of how the world started and then the scientific visuals
Mm.
of how it all started. And I thought it was an interesting marriage. It almost sold me like, oh, you can be really religious, but also accept the science of how like the universe, like I don't want to say really started. I mean, that's what I believe, the scientific version. But like, what is a day? What is time? Like in the
Yeah.
first day, there was light. In the first day, might have just been, what is time when there's no one around anyway? So I found that whole um, the whole imagery and the whole juxtaposition between the religious and scientific versions of history to be just the best part of the movie for me. I actually rewound and rewatched it afterwards because I enjoyed it so much.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing but the silence of an infinite darkness. But the breath of the Creator fluttered against the face of the void, whispering, "Let there be light." And light was. And it was good. The first day. And then the formless light began to take on substance and shape. The second day. And our world was born. Our beautiful, fragile home. And a great warming light nurtured its days. And a lesser light ruled the nights. And there was evening and morning. Another day.
I think that was that. I think he's done that style of editing and in a lot in some other
There's a lot of quick
parts of his
cuts.
movie, and
Yeah.
that's his strength. And I enjoyed that. Uh, I'm not saying like I do I just think this he presented his thesis of this movie, and I'm still debating with myself. I did groceries today. I was wondering while I'm wandering around the store, does this did I does the story of Noah even need to be
Told?
like no, I just didn't care. I
Did you
just
need a
didn't care.
theatrical version?
Do I even need a story like this? Or not even like this. Do I even need the story at all?
Well, like
Well, I
Like
don't know.
I
I
couldn't
think
care about Noah. Like and granted I know he's not the hero of the story. He's clearly
Mhm.
a flawed protagonist, but
Well,
I couldn't
hold on
even
a
care
second.
about
I
him
just
before
realized
or
something.
after.
I just realized something. I mean, Noah is, I think, one of the more well-known stories of the Bible. I mean, clearly, like, even if you don't really have read the Bible or know the Bible that well, you've heard of Noah and the story, and it's been something that's been referenced a lot. And so this is something that Aronofsky wanted to tell. It's not like
Yes.
there was a demand for another religious film, right? Probably the most famous one that comes to mind is like the Ten Commandments, which they play on Easter every year. So there is some audience for that, but it's not really something people are clamoring for. But you know what? You mentioned, Keith, I just struck me now. You mentioned before you wanted a Noah's Ark comedy, that you would have preferred that. That does exist.
yeah,
Evan
Evan Almighty.
Almighty. It's a terrible movie, and it does exist. They tried to do it,
Oh
and it
yeah, they
didn't work.
did. Oh yeah, I never. I think I felt that's like a plane movie. That's like a movie that like they put on for free
Yeah,
on a plane. Yeah,
that's right.
I've never seen that. And now
I
I
saw
to
like maybe 5 minutes of it, and I did not enjoy a single second that I did watch, but it's been done. For
it's
the
been
record,
done.
it's been done, and
I
it did
take
not
that.
work.
Maybe I just don't care about Noah at all.
And here's the thing, right? And here's the thing. You don't care about Noah, and I think and I think in some ways maybe Darren Aronofsky doesn't care about Noah either. In some ways, Noah is just a vessel. No, Noah. The story of Noah is a vessel to tell another story of like, you know, um, human destruction of the environment, and stuff that that Darren Aronofsky is passionate about. So, the movie, in a sense, becomes a vessel for a certain message that Aronofsky wants to tell, and I think he does it in a creative way, if
In
not
the same,
sometimes heavy-handed in some ways,
sure,
Very
sure, but
heavy-handed.
in that I
but it
agree,
worked,
and that
I think.
it's about humanity's violence towards the environment, but also towards each other. Because again, in that montage of how the world started and whatnot, you see like a silhouetted version of Cain killing Abel, but then also
Yeah,
projected on
both.
how that's something that's been done throughout all of history, which I find very interesting. Because the whole idea, I guess, is that all the wicked people in the world are the descendants of Cain, and those are all the people who get wiped out. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's still wickedness in the world afterwards.
Darren Aronofsky has been interested in this story since he was young. He wanted to do this,
Yeah.
and I do not deny his passion. I think he applies that same kind of passion to all his other movies. I think The Wrestler is a masterpiece. I I think, and I don't begrudge the challenge that he took to make this kind of movie. I I think the themes of this movie are kind of weak, or like it's expected. It's expected. Humanity sucks, but there's hope. I think those same themes come in Mother, and I think that movie's as chaotic as it is. It wants to be chaotic. It puts me through a nightmare, and it gets the message across way better than Noah does in its time length. I just don't think. I think the to quote, not to quote, but it's kind of weak sauce. I think the themes and the execution of it are kind of weak sauce to me.
Well, it's
Okay.
probably his most mainstream movie when you say in some ways it's an action epic
Yeah,
kind of
there are
like
like some cliches in there that you don't normally see
there is like
in an Aronofsky
there's
movie.
yeah, I think there's definitely like
I
going
think
back to Keith's
sorry.
Lord of the Rings thing. There is definitely
Yeah,
the studio wanted something that was like Lord of the Rings. Let's be real, right?
yeah, something
They
some
wanted
epic
that.
like that. I think maybe this movie would have been a lot more financially successful if perhaps it was released in like the mid 2000s when we had all these other ancient epics that were coming out again in the wake of the Lord of the Rings success. We had movies like Troy and what is it? The one movie about the Crusades. There were like all these like ancient movies being told, and maybe this movie was just a little late after people had lost interest in that genre.
He wanted to
Not
do it
sure.
after Requiem, or at least like after Pi or Requiem. I can't remember which. I think this movie would have benefited from a smaller budget because I think all the
Maybe.
graphics. I thought when the garden was coming up and the snakes and the animals are arriving. I thought that it's not even like I know this. Looking at CGI. I just thought it was if goofy.
Well,
If I can't
well,
find a better word, it's goofy.
well. You know what? Something I think you can achieve better with a bigger budget is like the physical production of it. And I like this arc set. I thought they had created a very interesting arc because I guess
Yeah.
when you usually think of an arc, you don't think of it on the scale you would actually need to. And I liked it was like this like huge labyrinth of a structure where you have like all these places for all the different kinds of animals, and so I thought that was something that you couldn't really achieve if you're doing maybe a more indie version of Noah. That's something I appreciated more out of this too. Like the visuals, not just CGI, but there were some practical things going on too that I really liked. You know what I thought was funny too? When was it Tubal Cain? He's like the bad guy of the movie. He like is able to get onto the ark, and he's like eating these animals. And it's so funny. It's like, oh, that's why we don't have some of these animals. It's because
There's
he
one
ate
of
them.
me.
Be funny if there was like a unicorn on board and he like ate the unicorns, and that's why we don't have those anymore. It's because he ate them. The jerk deprived us of these interesting animals.
The Creator formed us on the second day, the day He made the heavens. We watched over Adam and Eve, saw their frailty and their love, and then we saw their fall, and we pitied them. We were not stone then, but light. It was not our place to interfere, yet we chose to try and help mankind. And when we disobeyed the Creator, He punished us. We were encrusted by your world.
I just was going to go a little bit into the cast, right? So you have Russell Crowe as Noah, and he's playing this very I think the whole idea of this movie too is to show this tortured inner struggle of Noah, and actually also to show that he wasn't like this 100% pure good guy, because he does make maybe some bad choices throughout the movie. So I think Darren Aronofsky wanted to focus on that the most. And do you think him and Russell Crowe were able to achieve that in the movie? Did you find that compelling, or do you think that was achieved?
I thought so. I thought Russell Crowe was great. I think he,
Yeah.
he really portrayed the transformation of Noah from like this kind of like character as somewhat like jaded but still idealistic, and kind of following the word of God, and then it kind of like the weight of this responsibility starts to really weigh on him, and I think you see it in Russell Crowe and the way he shaves his head, and the way he like kind of grows as a character, and the way he begins to like interpret the world as like, okay, like we all deserve to die. It's like we're only surviving this thing so we could get the animals safe, and then after that
Yeah.
we are meant to die. We're supposed to die out, right?
It seems like the turning
And
point
that's
for
his
that
personal
is when he
interpretation,
goes
right?
when he goes into the village to find potential wives for his sons. That is the turning point. He sees the carnage, and then he's like, "Oh no, this all must be ended. Like we are such wicked creatures." After seeing that, and I was thinking to myself, this is one village.
No, well,
Have you like gone to other places and seen if they're all like this?
Yeah.
You're judging the whole planet on this one
I
place.
think it's also based on
but
his
I
life
guess
experience,
that's the idea.
right? And I think also like there was that scene where he went to the village and he saw the guy kind of like sell the women for the meat.
That's what I'm talking
And
about.
then-
That's the scene that he's like, humanity must
Yeah,
end.
but then like I thought it was interesting the way they portrayed it, because like he saw the guy like tearing to the flesh of the meat and turned around and looked at him, and then he saw himself. Like that was Russell Crowe looking
Yes.
back at himself, and he's like,
The Snake Boy.
and I think he realized that like he's no different. I think that's like a moment where like he realized, oh, I'm a bad guy too. I think it wasn't
Which also made me
judgment on
think-
them. It was him judging himself in a way, and I think he was like, okay, I
Right.
realize I don't deserve to live anymore either. Like,
which also kind of confused me because when he saw himself, I thought, oh, is this actually just a dream? But I guess it wasn't. That was just a visual way of showing that sort of realization that he. But that to me is that threw me off a little bit.
He's been doing peyote the whole movie, so who knows?
Those
Who
berries
who wasn't during that
Anthony
time?
Hopkins wants. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to do.
Drink some tea.
Yeah, and then you had Jennifer Connelly, who's like worked with Aronofsky before. I thought she was very grounded in the movie, so I liked her performance. I think she might have been the best. She might have done the best performance for me in the movie.
I thought she
What
was
about you
excellent.
guys?
I think she was awesome. Yeah, especially like when it got to the boat and like he was like saying how he was gonna kill the children that when they're born, or the child when it's born, and she kind of like tells him off and tells him like she'll like never forgive him. I think that was a really good performance. Even Emma Watson had a really good performance, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad. I like that they gave those characters. I don't remember their biblical names, but Jennifer Connelly and Emma Watson. I'm glad they gave them like some agency in the movie. It's not just all Noah doing stuff. Like Jennifer Connelly, she goes to Anthony Hopkins and she does things that are against what Noah wishes, but like that she thinks is best for the family. So yeah, I'm glad that they also focus on giving these other characters something to do, and they weren't all just at the whim of Noah.
Yeah.
I found Emma Watson
so-
distracting.
Oh, really?
No,
It's just a curse.
she's good, but I just kept going like I just found her distracting. Just like and I wasn't able. I don't think she was able to break into any character for me. But that's just like me being. I thought the
Was it
other
the Harry
kid did a
Potter
better
thing?
job.
Is that why
I
it's
thought
so distracting?
it might have. I want to say so, but
Do you think maybe they should they have gotten someone less famous to be
yes,
in the role? Maybe?
yes, because I thought about it. I'm like, was it Harry Potter? And even Harry Potter has been able to break out of his Harry Potterness. To me, he has taken on very interesting roles.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel
yeah.
Radcliff.
Because they're very
But
drastic.
I thought the kid who played Logan Lerman. I thought the kid who played Ham was great too. I don't think she was bad.
Actually,
I
I
just
thought
thought
he was.
distracting.
I thought Logan Lerman was actually the weakest actor for me because he seemed to kind of have the same reaction to everything. I appreciated that his character was maybe the most conflicted, but I didn't also totally buy the arc. Like I thought it was a little contrived that he meets this girl. Yeah, dead-unts. That was bound to happen eventually. But anyways, he meets this girl when he's trying to find his own wife. He meets this like poor tortured girl that is only to be killed 5 minutes later just so he can be even more mad at his dad and have a reason to portray him later on. But I thought that was a very obvious storytelling like plot device that he's meeting this girl and then she dies, because at one point he's acting like that they've known each other for a long time. It's like, I'm not gonna leave you and da da da, and it was almost as if like they had known each other. Like, we just met this character and you're just killing her off just to make him upset. And I feel like that is kind of like a shallow storytelling device that Aronofsky should be better than. That's what I'm saying. Like, when you say mainstream is most mainstream movies, like plot points like that, something that is not the most nuanced type of writing, basically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, so his character was like whatever for me. I kind of like, I didn't think he was bad in it. I just thought like, I don't know, like they're just.
He should have been more compelling.
Yeah,
he should have been, because you could tell he was supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't know, because Ham is a weird, like loaded like biblical character. I think, right? There's not much
Right.
about
I mean, there is
him.
that
There's not
thing.
much about him, but he's like the cursed son of
Right.
Noah, and they're trying to like extract that and kind
There
of.
is a curse of Ham,
Yeah.
right? I read something like that. There's a curse of Ham,
But that's because he
and
saw his
that-
dad's butt when he was naked.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Like he saw his father's naked drunkenness. But how does that make him
because he
cursed? That
didn't
should
cover
make
him up.
Noah's.
He told his brothers, and then his brothers covered him up. So he like.
Oh,
like,
okay.
He
That
judged
was
him.
that I noticed too. Yeah, that was a funny thing too. Like watching the movie, there's just a stark shot of Russell Crowe's butt when he's like drunken on the beach, like okay,
Yeah, so they had to
interesting.
kind of invent something for him, right? Because I mean, in the Bible, they all had wives. Like they all had someone to fuck. Like
Well,
Yeah.
Emma
Come on,
Watson,
Dad.
Emma Watson
I'm
was
horny
created-
over here.
She wasn't in the Bible, right?
the wives
yeah,
had no.
she was.
There's no names. Like I don't even think
Yeah.
Noah's wife had a name in the Bible.
What is it? An ark. To hold the innocent when the Creator sends his deluge to wipe out the wicked from this world.
The Creator does not care what happens in this world. Nobody has heard from him since he marked Cain. We are alone. Orphan children. Cursed. To struggle by the sweat of our brow to survive. Damned if I don't do everything it takes to do just that. Damned if I don't take what I want.
So what's an interesting trope too? I think this movie did is obviously it's spoken in English because this is for American audiences and made by a Hollywood production, but in order to I guess make it sound more epic or ancient, they're speaking in like English accents or in some vague European accent of some kind, right? Then a lot of movies, like I know, like a lot of these, like Alexander the Great, they're speaking in like kind of a British accent or something, and I'm like, why does it have to be British accent? I guess they're just trying to make it sound not American, but they wouldn't sound English
The weird
either.
thing-
I don't know, like what the solution would you
The weird
need
thing
for
was
that?
I didn't know what accent they were using. Like it didn't click to me. Like I couldn't tell. Like for some reason when they were acting, my brain couldn't connect. Like at one point I thought Logan Lerman was using an American accent, and then the next second I'm like, is that a British accent? And then Emma Watson.
Yeah,
I
his
couldn't
might have
tell
gone
what
in
the
and
fuck-
out.
I don't think that's on you though.
Yeah, no, it's not on me, but it's like there's this. I don't think Jennifer Connelly. Does she have an English accent, Jennifer Connelly?
She does not. I think she's an American actress. I
She's
could be wrong. I
American,
don't know.
but
I mean, obviously
don't
Russell
know if she
Crowe is
put on an
Australian.
English accent is what I'm saying. So like,
It was like it's like an acting accent.
Yeah.
It's like something you do when maybe
yeah,
you're
it's
doing
like,
Shakespeare.
It's heightened, yeah.
I am Sebastian. Blah, blah, blah.
It's like what you like imagine ancient people to sound like in English, in modern
yeah.
English. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying do something like in the Passion of the Christ where they speak Aramaic or something, because that's a whole other choice to make if you want to do that. I get like doing it in English for the sake of a modern audience, but I just find that to be an interesting choice. And again, going back to how mainstream this is, to have that choice. I don't know what other kind of accent you could do. I'm sure if they sounded like modern Americans, that also would throw us off. But maybe that's just a flaw in the genre as a whole.
Yeah.
Did this movie go on too long for anyone else?
Maybe a little bit. Actually, I thought the parts that I was like getting a little impatient was before the flood. That was when I'm like, all right, like, because they keep setting everything up and they keep building towards the flood, and I'm like, let's just get to the flood already. Because I feel like actually after the flood and onwards, it didn't really seem to drag for me after that either. There seems to be a lot of stuff happening. But when, like the whole building process and the Tubal Cain's kingdom conflict, that all seemed to go on a little too long for me, I guess. But I don't know, not too much. I expected it to be longer, if anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there were some points of drag. I can't pinpoint exactly where it dragged, but I don't know. I think there's a mix of both. Like, because I think there were some aspects of the story that I found less compelling than others. So like I didn't care for like the Tubal Cain and Ham sequences. Like I didn't really necessarily buy that Ham was going to betray his father and like help that guy.
I didn't
because
get
the
that
guy's,
either.
like,
That's why
obviously an asshole. Like there's nothing redeeming about like Ray
Right,
Winstone
the guy's
in this.
brutal.
Like, so Ham isn't that stupid. He ends up killing him anyway. So that was pointless. I don't know.
Just to kind of maybe like add more
Yeah.
to the story, right? Because what are they going to do on this boat full of animals for like the next 30-40 minutes of the film? Like, you got to have, I guess, the conflicts are that Emma Watson's pregnant and Russell Crowe doesn't like that, but then to add more to it, there's a guy who snuck on to this ark, and by cutting a hole in the side, that might have been a problem, but it's not. But the point is, like, now that sets up this battle scene again. A cliche that the climax of the movie has to be a big fight scene. Like you need a bad guy. The flood's the bad guy. The water is the bad
Well,
guy.
yeah, I imagine Darren Aronofsky saw like he did his research, and Tubal Cain apparently has like one line sentence in the Bible, that he's a blacksmith. He's like they're like Cain, descendants of Cain. We got the bad guy. I got my final battle. I know right before the flood, right before they boarded the ark, I paused the film just to see where I was at, and I had an hour left. And I was just like, oh damn, like I thought the movie could
Oh
go on
wow.
too long. This movie just not didn't hit me.
Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, I feel like anytime for a lot of modern audiences, it's hard to get them into like a religious themed movie because yeah, it sounds like it could be a chore almost. Like, oh, you're doing like I feel like a lot of biblical stories do have cinematic potential, but it's hard to sell that to people these days, and it could sound like a sermon almost. It could, you could maybe wind up with a movie that sounds like you're actually going to
Well,
church,
I don't want to say I like I a movie.
which I hate.
I mean, this movie didn't like. I was excited to watch this movie. I really kind of gave this movie like I went. I had no idea where it could take me. I didn't see it. I when it came out. I I I respect the movie. I respect that this movie got made in the way that it did. I think I because it does. I think a movie like this is good for a discussion like this. Like I think there are merits to why you can
Yeah,
like it to why you can't, and I'm happy it got made. I kind of appreciate that people like it and can back up the reasons as in par with me not liking it. As opposed to I'm like I know when I was doing research and looking at fan comments, audience reviews, it did say, a lot of them I cut out through the bullshit of I'm offended by this movie. This is not what happens in the Bible, which I remember the controversy surrounding that.
that's a significant portion of the dislike of the movie, right? Like that. I agree. I mean, I would sift through that too because it's all the same thing. Like, okay, that's
There are no
one
rock people
reason.
in the Bible. I'm
Movie.
like, yes, I know, but like that's not the point.
There aren't. Well, another controversy to touch on is the fact that the entire cast is, I guess, Caucasian. Like, yeah, I don't know. Again, like where exactly in the world that this would take place. I imagine somewhere in like the old religious world, like surrounding, I don't know, maybe like the Middle East somewhere. Um, you know, but that's like a common another common complaint about a lot of these epic movies is you have a lot of white actors playing uh, like Caucasian actors playing people that didn't have to be white. Like it's an all white
Yeah.
cast, but you've had like again. They had that Gods of Egypt movie from like 4 or 5 years ago, and again, all white actors. Like, this is like the ancient world. It could be anything, really. Like, you could have maybe you could be done something interesting where you had a very diverse cast, and Noah's family is made of people of like all different races. Like that you have a potential maybe to explore that, but um, and then I just didn't make a note on that.
Yeah, I think that's valid. You know, it is very pale cast. So yeah, I don't know. It could have
Yeah.
maybe done with some mixing up. I don't. Yeah.
I'm
Because if you do a movie like again that if you're gonna have a creative interpretation on again like the Bible, and maybe you can say, oh, this is like a blank canvas, we can do so much with it. Like, why not take some bold choices with casting? They made a lot of bold choices in visuals. Like you should try to explore every avenue that you
But
can.
it's like a big studio picture. So are they really going to take a risk like that by having like a mixed race cast or an all black cast? You know,
I
Well, maybe now they would.
I think now they would, and it's amazing how much in that progress in those regards has happened in 7 years. I that's why I think they went with Emma Watson instead of an unknown.
yeah. I'm
Like
disappointed
like
Marcelo.
that. This is how we get the Harry Potter crowd.
Yeah.
It's all
Oh,
and I'm sure Darren Aronofsky and the studio have their reasons for going with Like, as you said, they were him and Jennifer Connelly worked together. I think Anthony Hopkins was kind
I
of.
mean, they're
They're
all
all
good
good, but
actors. Russell Crowe is a great actor.
it's. I'm sure even Darren Aronofsky would say fair point. It's he went with like
Yeah, just to touch on
yeah.
that. So that again, you have like maybe some religious backlash, and then some maybe backlash and potential whitewashing. So you have those, but in terms of the maybe like the craft of the film itself, I agree this is maybe not for everyone. I mean, Keith, it seems like even though you said you were excited to watch it, based on what you're saying about not really needing a Noah movie, it seems like just premise alone, you're not really even again on board with the idea of doing a
I
Noah
think
film.
I think this is the only Noah movie that we could get. Like Darren Aronofsky is interesting, and granted, we've had past discussions about like movies that we've done on this podcast where it's like, my opinion on this movie has kind of changed, and we might get into that later on in another show. But I'm not saying this is the only time I'm going to watch it. I think my opinion on I think Darren Aronofsky's opinion on or how you feel about his movie is ever changing. I think for the first time,
Yeah.
I think for me, it's just like I saw the thesis that he's presenting in Noah. I respect the directing. The strengths are the directing and the acting. The weaknesses for me are the story and the structure and the pacing. And the story itself is, uh, while the lore is great, and I know he did his research and he was passionate about it, I just don't think it's a complete misdirect for me.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I feel like he had specific goals in mind for this film. At the end of the day, he really wanted to maybe humanize the Noah character and make him feel more relatable, or just more fleshed out, like more give him like a third dimension. And he wanted to relate the issues that the story of Noah explores to something more relevant to us today. I think those are his like ultimate goals. But
Goals worth
is
pursuing.
that
I'm not I'm
yeah
like definitely goals worth pursuing, and obviously like people have a good amount of people saw it, and some people, barring the offended people, didn't.
yeah
The way I see it is that in terms of like a religious themed movie, like Noah is probably as good as you're gonna get, right? Like you could either get super uber religious, close to the book kind of telling of it, which is it's gonna be so straightforward and boring, or you're gonna get something
yeah
super weird like Noah, despite some missteps. I think is kind of like a very respectable and creative adaptation of the story.
right. I feel like I'm gonna find myself somewhere in between you guys in terms of like the opinion scale here, because I did like I liked that there were choices that were made, but at the same time, I don't know. I almost felt like, to me, it didn't even need to be like a full length film at times. You can maybe have made this like much shorter, or maybe like as like a special or something. I mean, there is like an old Hollywood tradition of doing the more faithful adaptations of the Bible. Like I said, the Ten Commandments is played every year on Easter, and it usually gets like a huge audience. So there is some interest in that. And I guess maybe there are some people who are really religious that want to see that reflected in Hollywood more.
It's
I don't
kind
know.
of debate like people who love Passion of the Christ, but were out there probably protesting Last Temptation of Christ. It's
Yeah,
like,
well,
Yeah, good point.
I always think the people that were offended by this, because I remember the controversy, or people on like Fox and CNN talking about this, and it kind of is like a Streisand effect. It's just like it probably made people curious to see this movie. Like, this is an offensive movie, and then you go and see it, and it's kind of like how we talk about horror movies. Like, this
It's
is the
not.
scariest movie of all time, and you go see it, and people are like, I they may have their pros and cons about the movie, but I don't see it as offensive.
Yeah, I think that was definitely like blown out of proportion, as most controversies surrounding film are
Hot take.
usually.
By people who probably don't even see the movie.
Yeah, right. Sometimes people make an opinion without actually having seen it, you know, based on things they heard from other people or things they read about it. I don't know, but yeah, like again, a mainstream. This I can't think of any other recent mainstream religious themed films that are, again, like taken out of a story of the Bible. That seems to be like an old Hollywood thing, and maybe not necessarily something that has an appeal with modern film audiences.
Yeah, the most recent memory is probably Passion of the Christ.
Before that, which was that made a splash for just how violent it was. And I mean, that's a whole other different kind of movie for all other kinds of reasons. You know, also like the fact that it was spoken in Aramaic. But anyways, like that I think that had like a fire brimstone effect to it. That was also like a very like overly faithful, maybe some people would argue like too like literal interpretation of, you know, of what it's depicting.
Does the Prince of Egypt count?
Whereas
Oh yeah, Prince of Egypt, which actually I think is probably, I think
that made a
before-
big. That was like critically and audience and
was before
financially
Passion of
did
the
well.
Christ.
the animated
Yes.
movie, right? The animated movie that was the Prince of Egypt. That was like late '90s, I
believe
believe.
you're
I
right,
think
yeah.
that was like a DreamWorks picture.
No, I think it was Disney.
Yeah,
You're playing with the big
No, I'm
boys now. I remember that song.
I think that was. I'm pretty sure that was the same. That was DreamWorks when they were still doing 2D. Like, do you guys remember El Dorado?
Yes,
That was
that's
another-
definitely them.
Disney.
Yeah, I think. No, I'm pretty sure that was DreamWorks, and then they shifted over to like Shrek and did all sorts of like, you know, smart ass movies after that. But they had more of like a classic, you know, Prince of Egypt, El Dorado storytelling before that. But anyways, yeah, that's a good example of one. And you know, maybe
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna say animation and religious storytelling is an interesting combo too, because Prince of Egypt, that was going for, that also obviously takes some. That's like a family-friendly version.
Oh,
of the
very.
story, right?
And anything with vegetables too. I mean, those guys
Oh,
cornered that
well.
market.
But even that gets
The
dark.
VeggieTales.
You know? Like, I don't know how you do VeggieTales of drowning the entire human race. You
Did
know?
they ever do?
Yeah.
Did they ever do VeggieTales of like Abraham and Isaac? I was gonna say Oscar Isaac for some, but it's like, how do you do the VeggieTales version of that? It's just like, this cucumber is going to kill this pickle.
I think they
Like,
had
he's gonna brine him.
Abraham Lincoln's John Wilkes Booth assassination.
I don't know.
I think they did VeggieTales on that.
Oh my God, tomato sauce!
I would pay
Tomato
money to see
sauce
that.
everywhere.
Yeah. He broke a stalk
so-
jumping out of the balcony. You know.
He's like a John Wilkes corn on the cob.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I don't know, the whole idea, like VeggieTales, like let's inspire children's faith through like vegetables. Like, okay, and they made how many of those movies back when, in like the '90s or 2000s? That always, as a kid, like kind of creeped me out more than anything. So I don't know if that would have like done the opposite.
They always
for
looked like
me.
they were rendering as you watched them.
Yeah, it was very low budget.
But they ate from the forbidden fruit. Their innocence is extinguished. And so for the 10 generations since Adam, sin has walked within us. Brother against brother. Nation against nation. Man against creation. We murdered each other. We broke the world. We did this. Man did this. Everything that was beautiful, everything that was good, we shattered. Now, it begins again.
I think we can now move on to the phase where we give our final thoughts and our percentage score for Noah. So let's start with Sebastian. What's your like final take, and where are you landing on the tomato meter?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I like the movie. I liked it when I first saw it, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. I like it now, though. Like I said earlier, I don't know if I I'm compelled to like rewatch it all that much. You know, other Darren Aronofsky movies, like I'm afraid to watch again in some ways. So I need to be in the right mood. This one, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing again. Will I go out of my way? Maybe not. It was a little long at times to everyone's points about that. Overall, though, I thought it was a creative take on a biblical story, and I had a lot of respect for it because it really, I think it was kind of outside the box in a lot of ways. You know, despite being a little preachy at times and heavy-handed. So I think I'll probably give it like a B plus, I guess 80, 88, 87, 88, something like that.
Okay. So a pass for you, a good score for you. But Keith, what about you?
You know, I could say a lot of what you, Sebastian, just said, but I could view that like I think Darren Aronofsky, you have to be in a certain mood to watch it. Some like Requiem, I think is like once every 25 years. It's good. It's just like
Yeah, that's a
it's a
tough one.
very tough one. Um, I I know this won't be the last time I watch it again, and I'll be in a different place in my life. I know what to expect going in. The score will change. It might get better. It might get worse. Um, I I'm willing to bet that in compared to his other films, this probably ranks towards the bottom. And while I give it, he's a good director. He's an interesting director. He's not afraid to tackle different genres. Really good acting, really good character work. But the story itself just kind of drags and just misses the mark for me. And I'm gonna give it a 45, not on line of being offended, but just because I didn't care for it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that this movie may be like daring for a religious movie, but it is not daring for an Aronofsky movie, right? He's definitely been more daring in his other movies, and I think he probably could have taken this a lot further. You're right, Sebastian. I do like the choices that he made, but I feel like he could have taken it like a few more steps, right? There is potential to do more. And, I feel like a lot of times when you talk about certain prolific directors, like we've talked about a couple of Spielberg movies in the past, there's like, when they're already established, you kind of have a different bar set for them. Just you expect certain things for them. So it's good, but yeah, it could have. I think it could have been really great and something memorable. And unfortunately for me, it wasn't nearly that memorable. So I would give this like a 68%.
Really? Wow, I didn't think the score's gonna be that drastically different. Interesting.
I feel like the hard thing is his other movies have had a much bigger
For
impact
sure.
on me, and I feel like at the end of the day, even though I liked a lot of things, I didn't really have the impact that I think it was striving for.
Sure.
That probably is its biggest shortcoming.
I think, when I looked back on the movie before I rewatched it, I couldn't remember a lot of the aspects of it to its detriment, right?
Yeah.
And what struck me this time was the kind of like psychological torment of Noah, and I think I clung to that aspect of it as a part that I really enjoyed, in the sense that I think it was like, it didn't take the subject matter lightly in some ways, I also think maybe this movie was kind of like out of the director's wheelhouse in a lot of ways,
Yes.
him working on
Yes.
these smaller pictures. Usually this is kind of like very probably difficult for him to make.
Yeah, no, that's true. He might be. Yeah, he's some of his most memorable, impactful works were the ones where he probably had all the control, and he was again like Requiem, like not by all means like a big mainstream movie, but definitely like one that people first think of when they think of his filmography.
Well, before
And yeah, here again,
sorry.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
before
yeah,
I
sorry,
reveal
Keith.
the score, one tidbit that I found interesting was, did you guys in your this is actually a unique thing. You guys saw a pre-screening. was it take out aside from the stuff that wasn't added in, was it the exact same movie? Because the studio made 3 edits to it without his permission.
That's true. I read that. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I feel like this was pretty much the movie that I remembered. The only thing is that this time when I was watching it, there was no big ass shot of Russell Crowe's butt when he was naked on the beach. But I'm not sure if that's because that was something only in the test screening and maybe someone said
ass.
like, "Oh, I didn't like
More
that,"
ass.
or less ass. But I'm not sure if that's because of the way I watched it this time, which I found this movie hard to find streaming, and I was only able to find it for some reason. It's on like the Sci-Fi Channel app, which is interesting that this is sci-fi. I wouldn't say that the like Noah's Ark is a science fiction story, but yeah, maybe this is. I might have been seeing like what is a for TV version of it. So I don't know, which also kind of ruined the movie too for me a little bit, this particular streaming experience, because there were ad breaks that came in like the middle of scenes sometimes.
Tired of flooding
I
in
was
your
like,
house.
yeah, apropos ads as well. So anyway, that was like my little weird streaming experience with it. Like, this movie maybe doesn't have a lot of demand to be rewatched, which is maybe why I had a hard time finding it on like a mainstream streaming platform. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember him being too many differences to the one I watch now than to the one I watched previously. Though it was so long ago, I wouldn't remember anyway.
Okay,
probably.
that's fair.
But I wonder if this movie won't be like won't catch a second wind. I don't know. Maybe it's already like too late to catch a second wind, but maybe it might. You know, who knows? Someone might
I think
look
Mother
back
has
on
a better chance.
on Aronofsky's filmography and kind of look at Noah and be like, "What is this weird movie?" And then think, "Oh wow, that's really like better than we thought." Probably because expectations are so low about it. I don't know.
I think Mother has a better chance, honestly.
Maybe. I mean, Mother's a whole nother monster.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So what is our score?
Well, even though I went on the other side of it, I've yet to be dissatisfied with any of these final scores. It comes out to a 67.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we are like fairly in the middle, but we do lean slightly more towards the critical score. So that means that I officially decree that on Noah we are siding with the critics.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah. I think a 67, that's fair.
That's fair. I mean, that's not as enthusiastic as the critics, but it's not as negative as the audiences. So that's, I feel like, a more reasonable score. I mean, that's probably the lowest score I would give to any Aronofsky film. Yeah, maybe for Easter or maybe for this podcast, we can inspire some people to revisit this movie if they haven't in a long time or even have yet to do so in the first place.
I think it's a movie always worth checking out. It's not one of those. It's not a mediocre movie.
There's things to admire.
It's worth a film discussion.
It's
worth a film discussion.
Yeah,
it's worth a divided films podcast.
Is
what I'm trying to say.
It was made for this podcast. That's why, and now it's served its purpose and can get drunk on a beach. So thank you, Sebastian, for joining us for, I guess, what is our Easter episode, talking about Noah.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Hope everyone is enjoying the spring weather, and join us again next time, guys, for another Divided Film. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.